Welcome to the Life's Best Medicine podcast, where we are finding hope and healing one episode at a time. No appointment needed, no rubber gloves, and no coping. Just a healthy dose of life lessons to help equip you for this wild journey we call life. Hey everyone, we are in the difficult time of the year for us dieters and people trying to be healthy. You're going to have temptation. You're going to have some lattes here and there, and maybe sneak some eggnog and sneak a cookie that grandma made or whatever. So when you can be good, you simply snacking. They're great. They're sponsoring the podcast. They're doing some great things. And so on those good days, reach to them to keep you from grabbing that cookie. Eat something healthy so that you won't have to be fighting like crazy on January 1st, trying to get back into shape again and trying to get your belt loops, belts not so tight. So Simply Snacking's here to help you. So order from them. Again, they're a great company, and they have a unique code called Life's Best Medicine to get 10% off. So thank you for your continued support. Hello and welcome back to the Life's Best Medicine podcast. This is a fun one for me because it's my Patreon supporters. It's cool to have people who, they listen, they say, I want to contribute to this. I like the stories or something that reaches you, something that you said, this is valuable for my friends and family and all that. And it helps us just to get the word out to other people. And I think it's so important that, there's a lot of podcasts when I look at it, I listen to it, but I never contribute. I never help out, but I really like the message. And so I've been convicted on some of those things. So some of the podcasts that I listen to now, I'm supporting because I think it's really important for those to get the message out. And really, and just as a background, when we started Low Carb MD, we have over 4 million downloads now, but we never took a sponsor. But our Patreon supporters aren't enough. Like we bet on enough people would find value in it and say, here's $2 a month or whatever. And it really hasn't panned out that way. So Tro and I pay a little bit of money at the end of the year, but it's worth it because we believe in the message. We believe in the messaging. And obviously from a business perspective, it helps me because more people hear about what we're doing and they kind of like us and we have more patients that way. So that's one thing that we've been paid in that way. But financially, it's been a joke. Like Tro's like, you owe me money at the end of the year. And we owe each other money and it works out very well. It's not a big deal. But the Patreon supporters are the ones who help minimize the damage to ourselves that help us to say, okay. And with this podcast, I really haven't had to pay a lot of money. And once I got it started, thanks to you supporting me from the beginning. So I'll stop rambling here and let's start. Like some of you guys, man, it's amazing. Some of you, your stories are coming up soon. And so I'm excited for everyone to hear that. But Christine, you are our first Patreon supporter. I'm pretty sure of that. And so you've stuck with us this whole time, and you were actually a guest. And I didn't even realize when I had you as a guest that you were our only supporter at that time, I think. So yeah, and so people got to hear your story, but it's so great to have you back. And I know you have a bunch of big things going on. So what made you say, okay, I'm going to sponsor this podcast over other ones that you could have?
All right, doctor. I knew you were going to call on me first because I was the first Patreon supporter. I'm sitting here going, what am I going to say? Well, first of all, I wanted to be a Patreon supporter because I believed in your message so much. And this seemed like your ministry route that you were going on. And as somebody who works in ministry life now, I know we're always scrambling to get financial support and just trusting in God to give us the provisions. And I just love your message. I just instantly, when I saw the title of your podcast, it was like Life's Best Medicine. Yes. Like, what that's all about. And you're spreading that message, that part of our message. I think that we have a similar passion in our heart that we want to get this message out to as many people as possible. And in my own personal journey, I didn't find healing and weight loss success and healing my chronic health issues until I put everything together, body, mind, and spirit. I lived as a casual Christian for so many years, but I'm also a control freak, type A personality. And so in my many failed attempts at weight loss, I was so certain everything would work because I was checking off all the right things. I was checking off the right Weight Watchers points. I was checking off this. I was checking off that. And the one thing I wasn't checking off was my spiritual life. I lived as a casual Christian for so many decades because I was raised in the church. I was doing the right thing by taking my kids to church and hoping that the church would teach them what I felt they needed to learn. And it wasn't until I got so desperate in my chronic health issues that I finally decided that I would give I would cry out to God. Like in Psalm 40, it talks about being in a miry pit, and that's where I was. And so I reached up and asked for his help, and that's where I can look back on my journey of healing and see that it was step by step. Even though as a type A person, I would have appreciated a complete outline in front of my face at the time, but I had so much to learn. And so step by step through the journey, he took me through quitting sugar and then finally discovering keto and the low carb lifestyle and intermittent fasting. And then he healed me and put this passion on my heart to share the good news of great joy with everybody, because the greatest gift I got was the gift of joy. And so that's why I write a lot about joy. I have a Christmas devotional coming out this Christmas about joy. It's called Seeking Joy Through the Gospel of Luke, a Christmas to Calvary Advent countdown. And it's just an encouraging devotional to remind women that joy, if you have the root of joy in your heart, you can go through the happy times and the hard times. I've been going through some really difficult, hard times the past couple of years, and God reminded me through the hymn, "O Holy Night," the phrase, "The weary world rejoices." When I looked around the world last year and I saw how weary the world was, he reminded me that we still have that joy in our heart that helps us get through those situations. So I apply that to my body healing, my mind healing, my spiritual healing, and just excited to share joy with the world.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I think, being a light and saying, okay, look, I've had some success doing this. I want to share that with other people, not just saying, okay, I'm going to have all this to myself, right? I don't want anyone else to know. So that's what I found in the low carb community in particular, that people are very, if they learn something, they want to share it, they want to help you. Go, have you ever thought about trying it from this perspective? And I think that's so important. And were there any episodes for you that like struck you, like other episodes that you saw and go, wow, that spoke to me, or that person's story meant something?
I think that like the beginning episodes when you talked just personally a lot, I appreciated your stories and I kind of feel connected to you because we're in this space of healing with a low carb lifestyle, but we also have this message of our faith too. So I really appreciated that you tied the two together, and I felt like I wasn't alone in that space, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's critical because that's what I was looking at.
Mhm,
I see people talking about fasting,
mhm,
but not in the church. And there's some exciting things
mhm,
coming. Reverse the Church is coming out, with Charles Maddox, who has a show called Reversing Diabetes, but he's focusing on the
mhm,
church. I was like, wow, that is really powerful if you get people healthier in the church, because then they're more effective, right?
mhm,
Because a lot of us let our bodies go and we're embarrassed to go and talk to people. And so you hold on
mhm,
to stuff that you could really share, and you think you're not going to be taken seriously. And it's sad in our society, but that's the truth. And so, that's a huge thing. I think that's one of the things. And I think on low carb MD, I was limited because if I talked about faith, people would send us hate emails
mhm.
like, why are you talking about this stuff here? We're
Right,
talking about low carb. I'm like, well, it
right.
all ties together in good health, because if you're stressed and worried about the world and you have the weight of the world on your shoulders, you're going to have headaches
Mhm,
and feel bad. So I think it's one of those things where all these things I can't, and that's what I would tell people. I would apologize and go, look, this is me. I can't change who I am. This is what I believe, and this helps me get through the hard times. And I think hard times are coming, and I was right, right? Because they're always going to
right.
be coming. I can't be wrong on that.
Mhm,
So it's just how we do it. Like you said, you go through the hardest time, and that's what I wanted a podcast where, when you're going through the hard times, when you say, look, life's not worth living anymore, and it's
mhm,
some of the most powerful episodes are just being released right now, and I think, wow, this is like, it's really reaching people, and people are it's helping people who say, I lost hope, I lost all hope in humanity and people, and then to hear your great stories helps bring us back
mhm,
out of that. So thank you so much,
mhm.
and thanks for your support right from
Every
the beginning when we were just
Yeah,
fledgling, trying to figure out what the heck we were doing.
it's my pleasure. I was dancing for joy when I heard your first episode. I was like, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, and I think you said you were listening to it with people in the church and doing stuff, and that's what I want to do. And I don't want to
Mhm,
just reach people in the church. I want people who are sitting on the
mhm,
fence going, "What do I believe? Does it matter? These things?"
mhm,
Because what I
mhm,
noticed is the atheists would attack me the hardest, and I have nothing against atheism. You can believe whatever you want. I don't care, but let me believe what I want. And if you think I'm deluded, you're trying to prove to me that I'm deluded. I'm like, well, let me just tell
mhm,
you my stories and your stories, and then people say, "Wow, I got him through the hard times." Maybe because they
mhm,
think of it as a placebo effect, like you're just, you just don't see the world the right way. It's like, well, I'd rather not see the world the right way and be happy. I'm okay with that
mhm,
for a little while. But, I think a lot of us who've experienced stuff know what the truth is, and we just kind of have to speak about it, and then we get blessed back for doing that. And, we look back at
mhm,
our trail and you realize, oh my gosh, that happened for a reason 5 years ago, that I was upset, not that God hated me because, you know, things fell apart. But then you realize I was on a better path, and then you can just keep moving forward. Okay, next kid is Vic. Vic has been a supporter of low carb MD way back at the beginning, and like just involved with everything, and he's just been a massive support to us, and now he's supporting me over here at Life's Best Medicine also. So Vic, man, you're a blessing.
Yeah, man, right back at you, you know, and it goes hand in hand. So, you know, you call me a blessing, and I call you a blessing. And it's like you said, it goes back to the low carb MD, right? And when I was just getting involved into the low carb community, really didn't know my way. And I don't want to draw it into that full story of my carb journey or what have you, my ketogenic or weight loss journey, but you guys, you know, yourself and Tro, you guys took me in like under your wings, and I wouldn't have had, and the success that I had and how I keep maintaining it as I do right now, you know, with all the visibility you guys have and all the knowledge you spread and all the good that you do, I firmly believe that I would not have the results, and I would not be where I am today. So. I guess I'm a little bit of a old school guy. It's like I like to give back when I receive, and so I'm almost compelled to give back. And what you guys gave to me, I could never probably. I don't have your knowledge and your ways, but I can in some other ways contribute with support and giving people courage to go down and help them succeed in their journeys. Why did I jump on the Life's Best Medicine podcast? First of all, like I said, if Brian's doing something, it's going down the right path, and it's something that I need to support. And I believe in your, like Christine said, I believe in your way of the way you're spreading your message. And it's funny, like sometimes on Twitter, when things go out of whack and things are going out of control, how you come in and kind of smooth things out and tell people like, hey guys, don't lose your heads. You know, it's like at the end of the day, we need to be human, and, you know, don't judge people, and don't lose track of that, of people being respectful to each other, don't be judgmental to each other. I must say, okay, I'm a spiritual guy. I believe in all these things, and I'm not by far somebody who's in church every Sunday. But, you know, during the holidays and during Easter and during Christmas and with families, we observe, and I believe in the Supreme Being, and I believe in God, and I like to give Him thanks when things are going wrong. Okay, so and I see so much of you spreading that and being on that path. It's something that I get a lot of benefit from, hearing the guests that you've had on. Sometimes I question, like you said, you lose faith in the world we're living in. People have lost sight of what is life's best medicine. It's become very, I find, materialistic and other stuff, and before what the important things are of being nice to each other, being respectful of each other, not being judgmental of each other. I think I find myself sometimes at a loss, because I'm not saying I'm alone or I'm the only one by any means, but it just seems that we seem to be outnumbered by, you're looking for people that are like-minded, like everybody here on this podcast today, or all your guests, and so many of the other people, you know, in our community, let's say in the low carb community. Christine, for example, I've never met in my life. You know, I know Christine through Twitter, and there's a bond, there's a special bond, because there's a commonality there. So, you know, if she's having a rough time, and she might put a comment, and I'll support it, and vice versa. When I put something, she supports it. You know, it's nice to see that there still is humanity, and like on the guests that you have on, you hear their stories, and you say, okay, the world totally isn't out of control. There still are a lot of good people, and there's still faith, and there's still you just not necessarily come across them every day in our lives, but don't lose faith. There still are a lot of good people out there. So yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, I think that's important. And your story is just crazy. How much weight have you lost, Vic? It's ridiculous. Like, you're wearing your son's clothes now, and it's crazy.
110 pounds.
Jeez. I mean, my goodness, right? Like, that in itself is a miracle, but just being positive and, and I think, standing out, and the other thing that's great that I really wanted to accomplish with Low Carb MD is saying, okay, look, you're Armenian, and you come up with, here's Armenian dishes I'm doing in a low carb way, guys. And so you're helping the Armenian community. I have people in the Latino communities and the African American communities. We're saying, look, we can change what we're doing a little bit and be healthier.
Yeah. So yeah, it's all about giving back, and that's, whatever in whatever capacity I can be helpful, I'm there, because it was given to me. So the help was given to me. The help is still given to me whenever I do need it. So it can't be a one-way ticket in my books. Okay, it's when you're receiving, it's the way it's the cloth I'm cut out of. It's you got to give back. Okay, so that's and I know that that's your full vision. That's the way you are. As a matter of fact, my daughter actually listens to the episodes of the not the low carb MD, but she will listen to Life's Best Medicine, and she just says, you know what, she finds it soothing, she finds it peaceful, and she really enjoys it, and she listens to it as well. So you're doing great things, Brian, and always be there, and we'll always support you.
Yeah, and just so you know, it's not about me, it's about you. It's about the guests, having people on to say, this person spoke to me, this was important. And it's funny when Christine said that, those episodes, the first ones, the ones that when I just talk, I recorded those before this even started, because I knew the Lord was calling me to do this podcast. So some of those were like a year and a half old or a year old that I just said, I know I'm going to do this, so I'll just record something. And I thought, oh, this is going to be weird, just me talking. But my kids are like, Dad, we love those episodes. We love it when you talk and you tell your stories, because they know the stories. And so it's kind of cool that that people are open, because I think it's the same thing with low carb. If it's working for you, you want to share it with everyone, but you don't want to pound it down their throat and be a light, like blinding them. You want to say, hey, if you're interested, let me know. So people can come to this podcast. If you're atheist, if you're Muslim, I don't care. I think it's the importance, like, where do you go for your comfort and your peace, right? And so if you find peace through meditation or whatever, I want to be able to help people who that's what they want to do, because I can't force them all to do what I want to do. But I'm hoping that enough people hear your stories and say, maybe I want to try that, because I'm stressed out and I'm depressed and anxious and hate the world. Because like Christine was saying, is a lot of times people, you get all the nutrition right, you're doing everything right, except you're stressed and you hate the world and you're bitter with your husband or whatever it is. And that's going to hold you back. You got to let go of that at some point. Forgiveness and grace and peace and all these things are critical to better health. It's not just what you're eating. So, well, and we'll do it and I'll give you guys time to think about it, but I'd love at the end if we could all say, hey, what's life's best medicine for you? Like, what are your life lessons or things you learned, So now I got to jump back to a new kid here. Greg, welcome, man. I got your message on what you're doing. Appreciate your support here. So tell people about your life and what you're doing.
Well, I stumbled into this world a year ago, March, with the pandemic and seeing the relationship between people that got really sick and people that, and the weight, obesity and diabetes. And I thought, well, gosh, and my background's in public policy. I research economics topics. I give workshops to students. And for the last 10 years, I've worked with Christian homeschool debaters. So I'm down in San Diego at homeschool debate tournaments and programs. And so all around the country are thousands of these kids in 2 different homeschool debate leagues who are debating public policy issues. So I've been reading the low carb world, first Diet Doctor, then Low Carb MD, then watching the Low Carb Down Under videos and just learning these amazing things, history and how stuff works, and then sharing it to everybody, who came within 6 feet of me for months and months. So at the tournaments and I started keeping track of the people in the Christian homeschool world who I'd seen lose 40, 50 pounds, and started asking them questions. So I was listening to Low Carb MD. When I walk, I listen to the podcast. And then your Life's Best Medicine came up on my Google feed, I guess it was. So I tried it out and I thought, well, gosh, here's an intersection with the Christian homeschool world that I've been involved with for so many years, and the low carb world, because, you know, carnivore isn't your best entrance to, you know, to people, or keto or whatever. So anyway, so that's been my experience. Now, a year ago, April 2020, my father passed away. He was, you know, 90, and he'd lived a good life, but he'd suffered from type 2 diabetes the last 10, 15 years. And, you know, I just didn't know enough about it. And I didn't, you know, I just thought it was chronic, and we couldn't stop him from eating, you know, sweet things, but he was also eating low fat and his oatmeal every morning. Anyway, that happened. And then the next month I looked in the mirror, I looked okay until I turned sideways and then my gut stuck out. So I was up over 230, the highest I'd ever been. And I had one of these impedance scales because it's a gadget and it was fun, and I'd had it for a while, and you know, it labeled me obese for BMI and body fat. And then I started thinking, you know, my dad used to be slender in his 40s, 50s. He gained weight gradually until his 70s. Maybe I'm on that same path. And sometimes I was really thirsty, and gosh, what is that? So anyway, a combination of the public policy stuff, I think the things you learn from your various guests, from the people doing this research, knowledge is directional. When you learn stuff, it has an influence on. So I mean, one day I just stopped eating one day. I was sort of upset about something. I didn't have breakfast, didn't have lunch. I didn't want any cookies, potato chips, all this inexpensive stuff we'd got from Costco delivered to our door. And that started it. So I was eating less. I didn't eat any. We had these great Costco ice cream bars in the fridge, and I'd look at them every so often. And I wondered, why were they so appealing then and they're not now? So anyway, I lost 20 pounds through 1 month in March, or in May. I'm like, whoa. And the body fat numbers were going down. That's what I was most concerned with. And I was testing various gadgets and the Amazon Aura or Halo thing, and which is great for body fat, although you got to stand in your underwear in front of your camera and take pictures, which is weird. But anyway, so then I lost another 20 pounds through the summer and fall. And now I've been about a year at the same 190, 195. So that's really my story. It's a combination of personal things that I'm just sort of curious about. And I don't get tired anymore. I used to feel like I got unplugged in the afternoon. I'd like fall out of my chair my whole career. So there's that. And then, you know, so the different immigration is a big deal for me. Last year, one of the homeschool debate topics was European immigration to the EU. And you had a guest on the other day who'd come from, gosh, was it India, Bangladesh? I've forgotten. And, you know, so you've got all these immigrants that have these health problems. I saw the British system, 50% of the people who died of COVID were doctors from East Asia. In the national health care. I mean, it's incredible. And, you know, for Asians, people from India, their obesity is not as visible, their body fat. So all these different things, I'm just learning about this stuff. And now I realize I've got friends and relatives that are suffering, people I see in the home, and you can't just walk up to someone who's heavy and say, hey, guess what? But what I can do is talk about these ideas to my speech and debate students, link them to debate topics. We've got a current topic on biomedical engineering as the value topic for the STOA Homeschool League. So all these devices that measure things, that's biomedical engineering. Trade-offs, bariatric surgery, and those devices they implant through surgery, those trade off against changing your diet and measuring through a scale. So anyway, I'm involved in the intellectual side, or the history of it. It's fascinating. I'm just fascinated learning new things, and I'm excited to be able to share and try and connect. These debaters are communicators. They write speeches at every debate tournament, and they'll be excited to learn more about this. And of course, the kids don't have the same challenges, but they see their parents and grandparents ill from, you know, various chronic conditions. And once they learn they've been lied to, or misinformed, or the doctors aren't informed. I think that's a great message to share throughout the whole think tank community. All these people working with healthcare, hardly anybody's in the space among the conservative and free market think tanks. Anyway, that's my story.
Right. And I think it's so important, and what your work is so critical, because one of my big laments was we've lost the ability to debate reasonably. We've lost the ability to say, okay, I think low carb's better. You think low fat's better. Let's talk about it. Like, it always, you see it online in Twitter, like Vic was saying, there's always these people fighting over what, like, I posted something the other day, and I was just saying that there was a Perrier energy drink, and I was just making a point like, wow, I was surprised as a doc who does this stuff that my sugars were spiking when I had it, and I didn't realize it was sugar until I looked, because the only reason I looked was because my continuous glucose monitor said, hey, your sugars are, people got upset with me because I used the word spike. Well, if my sugar's running 80 and it goes to 105, to me, that's a spike. I just would call it that. If it's running 80 all the time and then it goes up to 105, I say, okay, there's something causing this. I wasn't, derogatory, but man, people get upset for a day about this. I'm like, I was just making an observation about how we could all be fooled if we don't look at the label and understand. And someone hands you this and goes, hey, there's a new energy drink by Perrier, and I assume Perrier water with a little caffeine added to it. Like, I wasn't even thinking sugar was added. So it wasn't. So people say, why do you think sugar is bad? Why do you think sugar spikes are bad? And I'll have to debate all these people for a week just by making an observation. I'm like, look, this is my observation that I saw. So I think it's really important that, the ability to debate in a reasonable way. Right now, what we're seeing is censorship like crazy, and that's concerned me, because I don't have to agree with you, but it's one of those things. Let me hear your point of view. Let me share my point of view, and let's discuss it in a way where we want to learn from each other. Because I may say I like that piece. So I've had people on the podcast I really don't care for their approach. I don't care for their attitude, but I say, wow, that's a good idea that you have. Okay, I'll take that little idea from you, and I'll put 99% of your stuff away, right? And then that person who comes along that works for, and say, hey, look. That's why I want to have people of different beliefs, or people with no belief that say, hey, I'm atheist, and here's where I find my peace through education. Like Nick Norwitz, he's a really bright young doctor coming up, and he goes, I rely on my intellect. I'm like, okay, I can't rely on I guess I don't have enough intellect to rely on that completely. But what you're doing with these young people, of the ability to debate and discuss things, because all great breakthroughs in science, technology, they become because people debate and go, hey, you're doing it this way. Why don't we switch what kind of chip we're using? Why don't we cut the carbs for a few days and see what happens? And then so I think it's so critical what you're doing, and that's great. So it's really an honor to have you on. So think about your life's best medicine, and we'll come back to you. So Sarah, you've been around. I'm saving Jen for the last, because by the time this comes out, we will have just released her podcast that we recorded already. So Sarah, we've had the opportunity of meeting a lot of times face to face and everything. So tell people your story and what drew you to this.
What drew me to keto was my doctor back in California connecting for me bipolar disorder, epilepsy, and the crossover in the treatments. I have bipolar disorder type 1. Yeah, and I am all about taking fewer meds. So he said, hey, maybe this will help. And I jumped on it. And here I am 110 pounds later, and that's like the bonus side effect to everything else. I was able to drop anxiety meds. I'm on the fewest meds I've ever been on. And it was because this doctor in California said, hey, maybe give it a shot, right? And yeah. I have come to Life's Best Medicine because I got so caught up in trying to figure everything out and getting overwhelmed and being just lost in it. And I needed something that was going to kind of pull me out of it. Like, if this isn't working, and it was kind of my life in general, if this isn't working, then try something else. And the first episode that I heard of Life's Best Medicine was the one where you were talking about your mom having bipolar disorder. And I'm like, oh, he gets it. He understands what it's not only what it might be like to have bipolar, but what it's like to live with somebody that has bipolar. And I'm thinking, my husband needs to have some kind of a connection with somebody that knows what it's like to live with the crazy chick, So I kind of introduced him to this podcast, and I had him listen to that episode. And the more he hears the humanity that comes from you, the hope and the encouragement and the stories on your podcast that are, it's not that easy. It's not always easy for people, but keep trying. the more he hears that encouragement, the closer and closer I think he gets to doing something about his health issues. And so that's why we keep like coming back and coming back and coming back. It not only blesses me, it reaches him.
Wow, that's so great to hear. And I think it's so important. I think, one of the things, if again, going back to open debate, Tro and I had a discussion about mental addiction, mental disorders, and we're seeing it getting better. So we're making an observation. We're just saying, hey, I'm seeing this too. So are you. Okay, let's look at this. And so that was one of the biggest attacks we've had online, because they say, how dare you talk about addiction? You're not an addiction specialist. I'm like, I'm not, but I'm seeing it. I'm seeing people go, yeah. Like, who was saying that? Like, Greg was saying, like, those things from Costco, they're sitting there, all these like ice cream bars, like, I'm not craving it anymore. Why not? Because when you're not starving and you're not stressed, you're not depressed. And one of the biggest sad points, if you're listening out there, Fat Fiction, is when I had all my patients up there, they said, doctor, you go sit down, shut up. My back was against the wall. I was at my church, as a matter of fact. And I'm watching my patients talk. And one of them said, you know what? It was like, she had diabetes. We diagnosed her with diabetes, and part of it's in the movie, but they cut it because I think they didn't want to be controversial at the time. But she said, it was like I walked out of a fog. My entire life, I was depressed and anxious and stressed. I never talked to my neighbors, and I was in a fog my entire life. And then one day I woke up, and like the birds were singing, and I could see the sunlight. And I went out and I started walking. I started cleaning my house. I started meeting my neighbors. I know all my neighbors now. For 20 years, I lived there and never met one of them because I just wanted to be a hermit, basically. And when she said that, the person next to her said, oh my gosh, me too. I was depressed and anxious. Oh my gosh, me too. Oh my gosh, me too. So every single person on that panel said their mood and depression. And I think that's one of the things I really wanted people to realize, that, like you're saying, Sarah, especially if we're controlling, like Christine, and we're like, okay, I got to do all this stuff, and I got to measure my macros, and you get so worked up about it that the stress makes it worse. I'm telling you, I've seen it in patients. I can predict now, if you're really stressed about the weight and you weigh yourself 5 times a day, you're not going to lose weight. It's like watching the pot boil, right? It's like, just go with it at some point. Just say, okay, I'm in this. I'm going to keep walking, and I'm not going to worry about it, because I'm telling you, we're getting more scientific evidence saying that the weight may not change right away. You may be putting, replacing fat in your muscle with muscle, and that's actually scientifically shown already. And so we're observing this stuff, and it's cool. Like in your story of saying, okay, look, if I can get some of the sugar out of my brain, if I can eat in a way where my bipolar gets better, because people don't realize it's like, and losing, that's a great thing. I love that you said, like, losing 110 pounds is like the side effect,
Right?
Because the goal was to get your mood right. And what we're seeing is the opposite. We're trying to get the weight and the sugars under control. And we see the mood get better. It's like, why is that happening, right? So it's so cool when you realize, okay, let me take the weight of the world off my shoulders a little bit. And that's the missing ingredient for a lot of people, is that stress, and they're bitter, and they haven't forgiven their dad for what he did when they're all those things. It affects us. It does. And to say it doesn't is it's incorrect. So how are you doing now? Do you feel like you're getting a grasp on things? Do you think like you're it's a journey? I know none of us arrive.
Yeah, I'm at a point now where I think that keto has done all it can do for me. Like, unlike Greg, I don't wear all the trackers. I don't know if you can see the tan line, but I took it off. I'm like, I don't need a piece of equipment that tells me that my subjective feeling is incorrect. I feel like I slept okay last night, but my tracker says I only got 4 hours. Well, I mean, I don't need that kind of stress. I'm actually reducing the stress. I stopped tracking so religiously my food intake. I'm kind of playing around at this point with adding in some things and seeing what might help as far as that goes. Like maybe 20 grams of carbs. I was metabolically broken. I'm not anymore. Maybe I don't need to keep eating that way. I'm playing around with, like, we just moved to Arizona. We're working on finding a new church family. I'm stepping out of my comfort zone. I started going to Bible study fellowship with my aunt. Like, I know nobody, and it doesn't matter. I'm finding community. I'm finding friendships. I get to cook for the extended family that's down here twice a week. And they're all keto, so that helps. But there's like 11 people, and I get to cook for them. I get to hang around with them. It's an attitude shift.
That's so important, right?
I'm not just sitting in my house not knowing anybody. I'm actually able now to start a conversation instead of waiting for someone to invite me in. And so it's kind of, it's a world different than I was 6 years ago.
And I'll tell you, Sarah, I appreciate you saying that, talking about the bipolar, because when I talked about it with my mom, I got in trouble. She was like, "What are you doing talking about my bipolar to everyone?" I was like, "Well, Mom, it's important because, you know, when you get your diet right, this can help a lot of people." So for you to say that, I've been vindicated by you. I was like, "Okay, Mom, listen to this." I know she listened to all of them. But, you know, I've had the honor of going to talk to her senior where she lives, Laguna Woods. Shout out to you guys, because they had me speak twice. And I'm telling you, the question and answer after my talk stunned me, because all of them asked thinking questions. Great question. Well, what about this? If this is true, how about and the critical thinking that we've lost? It's amazing. When I talk to a younger audience, like, okay, just tell me what to eat. What do I do here? Give me a menu. And the seniors are like, okay, I want to understand mechanistically how this is working, right? And it's amazing how great the seniors are out there. And it was really fantastic in how engaged they were and how focused they were. And I was thinking, I'm going to talk to people and they'll be sleeping halfway through type thing, but people were connected and they were asking great questions. I think it's that's another important thing. Part of life's best medicine is learning from people before you, and you hear their life experience, their life stories, and guys, you're going down a dangerous road and here's why. I've seen it before and I know. So that's why knowing history, you know, debating, discussion, that's why it's so great to have you all on, because I love it, because it's so important. And to be, you know, bipolar mental illness is something people just don't want to talk about. But I think it's important to say, yeah, I struggle with this. Just like someone with diabetes struggles or hypertension or whatever. How do we make it the best we can and try to balance out and all of that stuff? Like your husband dealing with that, it's very hard to deal with bipolar. It's like, you know, and you know, when you're up and you don't want to hear anything. When you're down, you want to hold everyone's hand. Please help me out of this pit. But it's hard because when you're feeling great, you're like, I don't want to take my meds. I felt great. I'm dancing all night. I'm great. Right. And it's hard because you feel so good coming from feeling so bad. So it's hard to get that even. And I think a big part of it is the low carb and keto, when you even out those hormones and the insulin levels and the stress hormones, all those things play a role. Also with bipolar, we do know that a lot of times it's brought out by a huge life stress, going through, like in my mom's case, going through a divorce or going through a big surgery or going through a big life trauma. Then boom, it comes out and people think you're just, you know, reacting or you don't care anymore, but it's physiologic. Yeah. So was there anyone, Sarah, that you listened to that kind of impacted you, that you listened to that kind of spoke to you, like one of the episodes or anything like that?
That one was really phenomenal. The one where you talked about your mom, that was the decision. Okay, I've got to support this. This is important.
Wow. My mom's going to be happy to hear that one. Yeah. I'll drag her on to talk about it one day. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I've gotten something from every podcast. You know, the ones that you talk about, your medical missions especially, really make a difference for me. Like, I'm not someone who can go and do that, but I can sure as heck support people that can go and do that.
You can go. We can drag you along. You can go. Anyone can go. You would be shocked. You'd be shocked at how you can help people just by being there and saying, okay, because you're going to find someone that struggles with bipolar and they think they're the only person. You go, yeah, I struggle with that too, right? Or whatever it is. It's amazing. I mean, the stuff I've seen on the mission trips, like people go, oh, I'm a construction guy. What use am I? And that's like, oh, my son committed suicide too. Okay. And they're there and the construction workers now helping this person because they're bonded and they have the hugest impacts, right? So sometimes you think you don't have anything to, and that's the thing is people go, how do you pick your guests? Because all your guests are so great. It's like, we all have a story. We all have something. All of us do. We all have. No, so it's hard to miss because everyone has some trauma in life or somewhere where they had to deal with something, or, you know, having a mentor like Greg coming in and saying, hey, this guy taught me how to debate. I didn't know how to debate before. This person cared about me, just spent time with me for a minute. And you know, and it's hard homeschooling, and, you know, the homeschooling over the years, if you know the history of homeschooling, took a lot of heat. You know, a lot of times people wanted to shut it down and not let it happen. Then they encourage it, then they discourage it. And so it's so hard, you know, and so, and there's such a misconception because I always thought of homeschooling was like, you're just a kid and mom and dad teach you and that's it. And you're like sitting there and you have no socialization. But a lot of these, like, they have the debate, they have dances together. They say, let's all come together and do stuff, you know? And so I think it's so important that people realize that, because a lot of people are having to make that choice right now, saying, look, I don't like what's being taught in the school. I want my kids home and I want to be an influence. Because what we're seeing now is another step of why I want to do the podcast is we took God out of the schools and now we have gun shootings like crazy. We have all these things. And we say, I wonder why that's happening. I was like, well, I could probably tell you why it's happening. When you lose the understanding that we're all human beings bonded together, right? And that we have to answer someday to someone else. that accountability is really important. I think we need to do that, not say, okay, I make all the rules and I do what I want. So that's why a lot of the stuff we're seeing in society right now is because of that. We've said, okay, we think this is the way to do it, humanistic way, instead of saying, well, do we want to have the blessings? Because all of us have been blessed and that's why we're here, and out of that blessing, you give, say, okay, it's worth it for a couple bucks a month or whatever to this podcast to keep getting these messages out, because we want to spread the word. And all of you are like that. You're all evangelists in a way, but no one wants to be an evangelist of like in your face and say, okay, you're a captive audience. We're going to make you listen. Right. So I'll tell you, one of the other things that was like really like I've been thinking about it all morning. A good friend of mine who's really atheist. He never really liked the faith, but he saw my life and how I'm living. And my wife and him talked last night. He said, I've listened to every episode. He said, I was riveted by these last 3 episodes, really talking about the gospel, really talking about, redemption and the prodigal son and forgiveness and grace and all of these things we all hold dear to us. And he says, wow, that really impacted me. I'm like, okay, cool. So those seeds, because I'm not going to sit there and say, okay, we're at breakfast and I'm going to talk to you about why you got to read the Bible, right? I'm not going to force that on people. But if they go, Brian, you seem pretty happy and things seem pretty good. I think all of us in a way are saying that, like, how do you come out of bipolar and smile and be happy? How do you come out of, struggling with your weight and losing 100 pounds? I mean, these things by themselves are a miracle, like all you people here, right? So that's why when I saw that, I said, gosh, dang it. I want it, because the 2 keto dudes gave me a platform to talk first, right? And I appreciate that always, because, just some overweight doctor talking about low carb keto, right? And I believed in it. And they go, you're passionate, you believe, let's do this thing. And we don't have to arrive. We just have to be on the journey, So speaking of that, Jen, it's your turn. You're on the hot seat now.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Christine. I found you. I found this podcast. I was actually searching for podcasts with Dr. Bickman as a guest, and this was one of the options along with the low carb podcast. But just seeing the title of this one and the little logo with the cross and the microphone, I just knew I had to listen to it. And then I listened to all the episodes to date before I went over to the low carb podcast, and just having that intersection of, healing your body and faith. I mean, you can't, like, Christine said, you can't do one without the other. It's, you can heal your body to a point, but it's not going to be a full completion of, until you're right, until you acknowledge that relationship that you have, with Jesus, and everything else doesn't matter. If you've got that down, then everything else will fall into place. And it's not always easy, and sometimes you want to give up, but you don't. And what I love about this podcast too is that you have everyday people that no one knows, and then you also have other doctors, other professionals that most people know their names, and it just makes it so much more relatable. It brings like Dr. Fong, Dr. Baker, it brings them all to, they're real people. They're out there trying to help us, and they're just trying to get the message out. And, it's awesome. And to, they're just not, and like Dr. Bickman, they're just not sitting there doing all this research. They're doing it because they want to help people. They're doing it because their heart's in the right place. And, to experience that and to hear their stories, and, the only thing I knew about Dr. Baker was, he's this, big buff guy, like doing all these crazy workouts. And then to hear his story, I was shocked and amazed, and hearing what he went through, just like, oh my gosh, he's just remarkable, and, and the other one that really got to me, that I was just bawling through was Claudia's, talking about, just she's thinking her son has a stomach ache and doesn't want to do his homework, and then here he has cancer, and then just uprooting herself and her child, going to another country, and as a parent, you're going to do, like, they can give you a 1% chance that your child's going to make it, and you're going to do what you need to do to take care of your child the best you can. And just everything, how it all came together for her, and her son's healing, and the healing, even with, she talked a little bit about, between her and her husband, just how everything came together. It like, I have goosebumps just thinking about it. Like, it's just, I love all of these stories, and like you said, everyone has a story, and it's just awesome to be able to, each one you can learn from and relate to a little bit. And, it's just awesome.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up Claudia, because that story, when I was in Guatemala, my buddy Carlos kept saying, ask her her story. And her husband's a famous soccer player. As a matter of fact, just this weekend, he got elected to be their sports commissioner, like the top, like over the Olympic committee, over all the soccer, over everything. And after all he's been through, and again, like, he'll tell you, he was arrogant. He had a lot of, like, he wasn't a good husband. And then God spoke to him, and everything changed. When his son got sick, it changes everything. And so that's a big part of this, like saying, okay, what really matters? You go from having everything to, you're going to Canada and you have no pool. You can't say, hey, I'm Jorge. They're like, who's that? We don't know soccer over here, right? So when you realize, when you get stripped of everything, what really matters, and her, like, being such a loving, kind person, what she's doing now to help, the kids in the Merlot Foundation, which is now, they just got their accreditation. Now they're a legit nonprofit on their own, without having to be relying on other people. So, what they're doing with these kids is amazing. And her seeing these kids at the zoo, that she made it happen, like, no charge. And they got to go play and see the clowns and the monkeys and all this stuff, and see the joy in these kids. Man, it was something that really impacted me too. But someone like that, who just deserves to be blessed, and it's happening, but, just really having to rely on your faith. And I think a lot of us in the US, when I look around, one of the big things that impacted me when I was in Cuba, it was, they said, hey, we're praying for you guys. I said, what are you praying for? Persecution. I said, what? Persecution? Yeah, because then you'll know what you believe. You'll know what you believe, and you either stand it. And I saw it in Cuba. These kids, like, up in the rafters, sweating like crazy, and, like, they're just praising God, right? Even though they have nothing. But they have to rely on faith. They can't rely on having it. Now we're starting to see people are getting worried because the stores are empty, and the ships are sitting off the coast. They can't get stuff. So you say, okay, now what are we going to do, right? For those of us who can fast, we go, okay, no, I'm not too worried about it. As long as I got water, I'll be okay. But, I think a lot of that, of reassessing, and, I don't know how many, but in my old practice, we went through an embezzlement, and, all of a sudden I was like, okay, you have no money, and now you don't get paid for a couple months. Oh, okay. But we got rid of cable. We got rid of all the stuff we didn't need. And our Christmas was the best we ever had. Like, we still talk about that, just being together, like, not worrying about, like, let's not buy gifts this year. We'll each get one little tiny thing, less than $20, and we'll just do it that way. Right. And we had a blast and played and had fun. So, a lot of us think it's that. And I think that's why I did the podcast too. I wanted people to realize, like, what really matters. Because I'm telling you, I see people, in the Bible, it says chasing after the wind. I see people who are just, they want to have a nicer car, a bigger house, and all this stuff. And at some point you go, does it really matter? Do you really care? And that's one thing I've been blessed with. I really don't care about socioeconomic status and, all that. And that was one thing that Marcy, her story too, was that they moved into this high socioeconomic class because they were blessed to have this big, huge house in the middle of a very fancy, but they didn't have any money. So you're there and you don't fit in because everyone else has tons of money. They're flying off to France and doing all this crazy stuff. And you're like, well, we can't even take a weekend trip because we can't afford to do that because of our situation. So anyways, that judgment and there's so much of that kind of stuff out there that we just worry so much about what everyone else thinks. We worry if our clothes are too tight, like, okay, let's do something about it, not worry about it anymore, and that's what I love about all of you. You've made life changes, right? And then you want to support that so other people can hear that. So it's awesome. Greg, you look like you want to say something.
I was just thinking, one of the advantages of getting older is you're not quite as, you don't care as much about fitting in. You still want to have a community. You still want to have friends and relatives and associates, but you don't have that angst that you often have in your teens, 20s, and 30s. But I just so much enjoy hearing the stories right here and the sense of what matters the most. And yeah, so that's what I would say too, that I recommend everyone and listeners look around for a homeschool debate tournament. If you want to meet people in your community, they're always looking for judges. They're trying to find judges for these tournaments. They have the tournaments in churches or in churches or Christian colleges. And the kids, so the teenagers are debating, the parents are helping out and judging, people from the community are judging, and the little kids are all there, the younger siblings. And they're running around like crazy. A lot of times they're timekeepers. I was at a tournament in San Jose, and these two little kids chasing each other, just one of them just slammed right into me. It was in the middle of a conversation. They're just having fun. And the kid spun around instantly and stared at me, and he said, "I'm so sorry." And this is a little kid. And he wasn't going to move until I said, "That's okay." And then he spun around and took off after his friend again. But you just love seeing these families. And they giggle when I talk about how well behaved they are, because they have fights at home and everything as well. But I just get the sense of the Christian community that I see in the Christian homeschoolers and through my relatives that became Christian evangelicals, how wonderful they are. One of my cousins was just a terror when he was a kid, and now he's the best guy and his kids are the best guys. I think, gosh, if Christianity can do that for my cousin, it must be magic, right? So anyways, you're being around good people, and that has so much influence. And now I get to be around these people through podcasts, and I hear their conversations, I get their stories, and those stories are so influential. And you don't have to agree with everything. You say, no, this could be or that could be, but it's like being in a conversation. And yeah, anyway, so it's such a gift.
Yeah, I think it's so important just to hear like other people's story. Like Kevin's story like impacted me hugely. The prodigal son sold all of his inheritance. He's like the prodigal son. It's amazing and how God used him being a knucklehead to really save someone's life and other people's lives. And you go, wow. I mean, that just tells you, like alcoholism and bipolar. When do you give up? When do you not give up? When do you stick with that person? It's so hard. It's such a hard thing because some people will never get it right and other people will. And so like so many times I hear stories when people say, you know what, my aunt prayed for me all the time. Like my aunt, when I became a Christian, she goes, "I've been praying for you for 10 years, 10 years. Like legitimately every year I've been praying for you, like every day, like for years." And I was like, wow, that's pretty remarkable. I mean, that's pretty amazing because some people go, they're a lost cause, forget it. I don't want to deal with them anymore. And we all have family members like that. And I do. And so, at some point you go, gosh darn it. When does grace win and, judgment? And we all deal with all this stuff. So Greg, since we're running, I don't want to keep you guys too long because I know people had stuff going, but if we could just go around and say, what's life's best medicine for you? Like, I'll let you start, Greg, since you have your mic on already.
I didn't turn it off. Well, I think community, having friends and relatives, people you can talk to. I have friends that are challenged health-wise, and every problem is so complex. And of course, I'm not a doctor or nutritionist, but it's great to be able to share these ideas. And my cousin who lives down in Cardiff, I talked to him about it. I saw he'd gained weight when I saw him a couple months ago. And now he's been going on keto, and he's, lost 15 or 20 pounds and feels better. And his neighbor was at the low carb conference down in San Diego and is involved with one of the companies there. And so it's fun to share these ideas. And my whole background in economics is sort of telling people what to think about public policy ideas and advantages of free enterprise and free markets, but it's through history, through stories, through explanations and examples from different countries. So now I'm telling them what to think about what they should eat. But Gary Taubes is great on that. Not everybody can eat everything. And you always emphasize the N=1. Everybody's different. Metabolism is different. Microbiome is different. So we're just trying to help people on their own journey of discovering what works for them health-wise. And you can't help but be impacted by the suffering all around. And so much of that suffering in my community, things I see on TV, is from people eating the wrong things. And they think it's, Donald Trump or politics. A lot of it is just bad nutrition. A lot of it is politics, but the nutrition is important. I don't want to end on a sour note there. So
yeah, but that's true. Yeah, that's true.
Too.
It's sometimes just reassessing what you're doing, because a lot of people and you'll see, we all know, Vic knows, I talk about this a lot too. It's like when someone's really not, like we see people who lost 110 pounds, and someone will inevitably say, yeah, but look at that loose skin, it's disgusting. or they look at the negative rather than, and that's coming from, and like I had the honor of having Zuby on, the rapper, and like he's saying, look, it says more about the person saying it than the person it's directed at, and that's what we have to remember, because we're all going to be targets, and the people are sitting in their basement and they're going to criticize, well, your podcast it's too long, it's too short, you talk too much, you don't talk enough, you don't argue enough. Yeah, so it's like, okay, this is what it is. Right? Either you listen or you don't listen. That's okay. Like, we're not forcing people to listen. If you don't want to hear about Christianity, don't listen. If you want to, then good. If you're open-minded and you want to hear something, and because I realize I can't preach the Bible and say, well, the Bible says this, so you have to listen to this. This is the Bible says. I don't believe in the Bible, so it's a waste. But when you hear Jen's story, when you hear Christine, when you hear people's stories, right, of Sarah overcoming, they go, okay, that's their story. Like, I can't argue with the story. You can say you're wrong and you believe wrong, but it's working for you, so I'm okay with that. But I'm amazed. The thing that's really, really amazed me is how many people are offended by having hope and faith. That is the thing that's really shocked me, is like, by giving people hope and faith, what's wrong with that ever, right? What's ever? Unless you're giving false hope, you go, okay, your cancer is going to go away next week and you got metastatic cancer everywhere. That's different. But even having hope in that, saying, hey, we're with you. Like, we're going to do everything we can. We're going to hold your hand. We're going to make sure you're not alone. We'll get you the support you need. Like, to comfort someone in that time, we're not going to cure everyone in medicine. That was abundantly clear to me in my first year of med school, that we die, it happens. But how do we go through death? Are we in fear? Are we like hopeful? And, I've seen both extremes. And that's why, I think about these things more, because I'm exposed to it more. Like, you realize, look, you could delay it by a week or a month or 2 months or 6 months, but no matter the technology, none of us are immortal, right? So let's go backwards. Jen, your turn.
I think life's best medicine is definitely always have hope, to show love, and when things get tough, pray and find your community, find someone, even if you don't think you have anybody to talk to. Like, I follow so many people online now because of them being on this podcast, and Christine's one of them. I didn't know she was going to be on here today, and so this is awesome. And I've reached out and had conversations with her, and it's just awesome to have that connection, and to know someone else has been in your position, and to see someone on the other side definitely makes a huge difference. And to know you've got the shared love for Jesus, and it's just awesome. So, definitely have the hope, and show love whenever you can, in whatever way you can.
Awesome. Vic, I'm just going by the order you're in, like Brady Bunch here on my square here.
Yeah, life's best medicine for me is harmony, peace. It's like you said, all the rest of the stuff, the big homes and the fancy cars and what have you, it's worth nothing if you don't have a peaceful and happy home, right? So this is what people all too many times get strayed away for, and concentrate on just keep going after all those material goods. And well, if you good for you, if it's not getting in the way of your happiness and your harmony and peace in your house, good for you, the more power to you. But if it is getting in the way, you need to reassess that, in my books. And and without being cliche, I don't know if it's because I've gotten older or what, it does a tremendous amount of good to me. It's cliche, but it's better to give than to receive. And I just feel so good when I can do any good deed to help somebody out, whether it's on a diet, or whether it's they're going through any kind of stress in their lives, if they're having any issues, helping them and expecting nothing back in return, because you're doing it because you want to do it, and that's the best life's medicine for me.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Sarah?
I think life's best medicine for me has been to discover that it's okay to ask questions, and not just in a dietary setting, but in life. You know what? God can handle questions. God can handle if I'm angry. God can handle that I'm wrestling. God can handle all of that. It's not a sentence to hell if you have questions. If you're mad at God, why the hell do I have bipolar? What did I do? What did my parents do? Like, who did something wrong? I can be mad about that. And it's okay. He still loves me. And that realization has helped open the door to me to ask questions in all the arenas. You know, God still loves me. God still loves you. Ask the questions. Look for the answers. It's not a bad thing. You're
That's
not
awesome.
going to hell if you have questions. You're not.
Yeah,
going
that's
to hell if
awesome.
you're
And to
angry.
say, I'm not happy about this, God. You better have a plan in this, right? And a lot of us have been in that. It's like, I don't want to say anything and make him upset. So then everything gets messed up, right? It's one of those things, but be able to say, look, it's just like a parent, you know, if a kid questions you, like with our government, we should be able to say, hey guys, why are we doing this exactly? What is this? What science is this based on? We should be able to have that right as people and as husbands and wives to say, oh, why is it that we have to do it this way, honey? Right? Why does it have to be this order? Does it matter if we change it? You know, those kind of things where sometimes we lose our flexibility. We don't even know why. We just want to control that situation, right? And so that's a huge thing too. And you know, just that you're willing to come on and talk about it. And you know, it's hard. It's hard. No one wants to talk about their history of being like Peter Ballersted's another one. He came on and surprised me and he says, hey, look, I'm an alcoholic. I was a total jerk. And I was like, wow. And he's one of the nicest people on earth. And he's fantastic. And, you know, that's why I wanted this to be, if I'm going to have someone on, I don't want to just talk about, okay, let's talk about low carb with Jason Fung. I want to hear about Jason. What do you do for fun? What matters to you? What gets you out of bed? Like he was going to be a jet engine mechanic, right? And you're like, wow, what made you not do that? Right. So, you know, an engineer, and you go, wow, this is like, you know, cause he's smart. And you go, okay, how am I going to use my intellect? And so Lisa, and I'm telling you, anyone who hasn't listened, Sean Baker was the most surprising interview I've ever done. Like it surprised me because I was like, I knew kind of his story, but I didn't know the details and how you do it. And it's great. It makes you have a new understanding. It's like, okay, he's not just some guy who eats meat on you know, there's more to this guy. And he's very smart. And I'll tell you, Ben Bickman, you know, all these people that we've talked about, they reached out to me and helped me when I needed, or if I need anything, they would share all their stuff. Ben Bickman, I said, hey, can I talk about your slide? He goes, here's my slide set. Use whatever you want when I gave a talk. So I use his stuff all the time because he was frustrated because he's coming up with all this stuff, but no one's showing it to people. So when I said, hey, I want to show it to you, he's like, oh my gosh. And I use his stuff every single day. I use Jason Fung's stuff every day, right? Because it's not about me. It's about us like doing what we can to help the patient, you know, and it's so important. So all of you are doing that. You're sharing and you're saying, hey, it's valuable to me that I want to support this. So Christine, we're going to have you back on the podcast. By the way, we're going to have our thing whenever you're ready to talk about your Christmas stuff. And you know, so what's life's best medicine for you?
All right. So we know the old adage, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. And I used to cringe when I would get the question from people that wanted information about my lifestyle. Like, do you eat fruit still? And the truth was that I really don't eat a lot of fruit anymore. And so that would kind of scare people away. But as I got bolder in my faith and sharing my story, I realized it was opening the door to share the gospel, because now I have a fruit that is so much better. The fruits of the Spirit, you know, we have love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness. And the big one is self-control, which I never had before. And it's allowed me the self-control. And my other favorite verse from 2 Timothy 1:7 is, you know, God did not give us a spirit of fear. He gave us his spirit of power, love, and self-control. And I used to live in fear. And going through this journey has just helped me step out of that. Being so free and being able to share with people how rich God's word is with scripture in guiding us on this journey as well. Like one of my other favorite verses is when Jesus says, man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. And so, you know, every day when I get in the word, and first thing every morning, I call it my Bible and beans time, you know, because coffee is big in our lifestyle, right? Can't go without the coffee. But it's just such a delight to be able to share that. Like, no, I don't eat fruit anymore. I don't eat bread anymore, but God completely flipped the cravings of my life. And I want to point you to where you can find that, where you can find the satisfaction and the satiation and have those lost and alone and isolated feelings release too, and just live in freedom.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And that's how like low carb. I mean, I've seen so many parallels between faith and low carb, right? Because you don't want to be the evangelist, you don't be, and people are feeling better and they want to help other people. But some people don't want to be helped, or they're not going to change. They say, I'm not going to give up my cookies, my donuts, but I'm not going to give up my pornography and this and this. So you go, oh, it's going to be hard. It's not, you're not going to get the fruit. Like the fruit of the spirit, that's the most important thing, right? Like people say you're against fruit. Well, the fruit of the spirit, I'm totally for. Like I think I've tweeted about that before, because there's no law against that. There's no law against being kind and gracious and, you know, having self-control, right? And, you know, like Greg is saying about the kid bumps into him, the kid could have just went on, but it means something. It means something if someone lets you in traffic and you say, thank you, I appreciate that, right? Just that little thing. And I always appreciate that. I go, that's nice. I go, look, they gave me a triple wave. Thank you, thank you, thank you, right? So it's like, you know, that kind of stuff, or other people just jump right in front of you and you go, okay, bless them. They're having a bad day. And so all those things, letting someone in front of you in the store, some guy held the door for me the other day. I'm like, hey, thanks, man. That's really nice. I've gotten yelled at for holding the door for someone, right? So, so anyways, I think it's so important that these things, and all of you have this positivity. You've been through a lot in life and you share and you're reaching out. And I'll tell you, one of life's best, that, you know, when I look at life's best medicine, I see the happiest people are the ones who help other people, and they don't go out to tear other people down. And that's what I want to be. I want to be saying, hey, look, great, you're on the road. Maybe you're not perfect. Like, we all know spiritually and dietary wise, none of us are perfect. So I think that's the important thing. When you realize that you're not perfect and that you don't have all the answers, and you start looking somewhere else, whether it's God. When people say you're weak, if you have to look at God, okay, then I'm weak because that's what I need. I need guidance sometimes, and having accountability, having a group like this of positive, good people of saying, look, because we all go through, I wake up sometimes and think everyone is just a disaster, you know? And then you hear a nice person do a nice thing, or you see something nice on Twitter and someone's uplifting someone else. You go, okay, this is what I want to be a part of. But like so many times on Twitter, I go, that's it, I'm done. I'm not looking at this anymore. And then, you know, I have nice people like Tyler, who we had on, and all these positive people like you all that say, okay, I'm going to get something good out of it. I'm not going to go somewhere where it's all negativity and bad. So, but I want to thank all of you. Vic, you have something to say?
Yeah, I'll just piggyback on that, and just to say, like you say on Twitter, and you see the good in people. And Brian, and you know that I you know, I'm coming off an injury. I'm still, you know, in recuperating from an injury. The outpour and the DMs I have received on Twitter, from the keto low carb community, it's unexplainable. It's crazy. It's, you know, it's like I was telling my wife, I go, you know what? The majority of these people I've never met in my life, and they're reaching out and they're sending prayers and they're giving you goodwill and good words. And so, yeah, it's awesome. There's, like, to repeat again, there's still good people left in this world for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's so important to realize, right? That you realize that. And, you know, like when my dog died a couple of years ago, so many people reached out and go, I'm so sorry. I know how it is. I have a dog too, and I lost my dog 2 years ago. So now I can return that favor to someone when they lose their dog. It's like, oh, I'm just going to tell them about my story, or tell them, you know, hey, I'm thinking about you. I know it's hard, because people who don't have dogs don't get it. It's like certain things in life you just don't get. If you have a dog that's been your family, you know, your hiking buddy, and you're sad and you have a hard day and they're wagging their tail and happy to see you, all those things, people don't realize that. So yeah, that's awesome stuff, you know? And so, you know, we're going to keep going with this podcast, and really you all, and really, this podcast, I felt a calling to do it for a long time. And I thought, yeah, I just want to fly under the radar. I really don't want to. And God kept saying, you're going to do this. You're going to do this. So, but then I knew financially, I was starting a new practice. I took a huge pay cut, and I'm putting all my money into this new practice. And so I was called to do this podcast at the same time. But I thought it was a perfect time, because I was walking through the fire too of, so many of us are afraid to step out of the unknown, out of the known, even though it's not great for us, and to the unknown. So I said, look, I want to kind of show this journey too. If I lose all my money and everything goes terrible, you're going to see how my faith is in bad times. If everything's going great and I can thank God for this, then you're going to see my faith in the good times. But that's what we have, is like having that faith with good times, bad times, no matter what the situation. Like Paul said, is like, I'm in prison, but I count it as a blessing. I was like, well, I don't know if I would really count being in prison as a blessing, but sometimes when you see the bigger picture, you go, okay, I could suffer for a little while to get what I need, or what's going to be good for me, right? So, you know, so many of us right now, and that's why I so appreciate you all supporting it, because I was hoping people would get the message and say, yeah, I want to see positivity. I want to see something good in the bad. I want to see a light in the darkness. So all of you made that possible, because for me, I was going to my pocketbook. So I'm telling my wife, okay, I'm starting a new practice. All of our money is going there. I'm taking less income, and I want to start a new podcast. She's like, okay. Right? Okay, we'll make it happen. We'll work it out, right? So many of us, it's hard because you're stuck in a bad job or a bad relationship that may not be good for you. And sometimes you have to look and say, okay, I got to make it better. This is not sustainable anymore. So, what all of you have made huge changes in your life, and you want to bring that to other people. So I want to thank you all publicly for that. And does one of you guys want to close this? Or anyone else have anything pressing they want to say to people on the way out? We've covered it all. Oh, Jen, you want to say something?
You're the
I just
expert
wanna
in you're the expert in closing out, Brian.
Yeah. I just want to say, and I don't want to, talk for everybody, but just thank you so much for starting this podcast, and your passion comes through, and it's beautiful. And if I only had one podcast to listen to, this would certainly be it. Like, it's just awesome. So thank you so much.
Thank you. That's good. That's good to hear. That's what I was hoping for. I knew God would be in it, but it's really about you and your stories and what you're doing to help people and all those things. And you reached me, Jen, because you said, "Hey, I'm starting a new Bible study, and we're listening to your podcast while we're knitting, while we're doing something." And I was like, "Man, that is so awesome!" Because low carb MD, I would have people say, "I'm on the tractor and I listen to you all the time on the tractor." Or, "I'm going for a hike and I'm listening to you guys." Or, "I'm doing this and I'm listening." I'm like, "Wow, that is so crazy!" Because when you're making it, you don't think in those terms. You don't think someone out there is in their tractor in the middle of Arkansas and they're listening and it's helping them. You're like, wow, that's kind of cool. Because in my exam room, I realized I could see, I see fewer people now, but I used to see 26 people a day maybe. But how much of an impact can I have in 6 minutes or 8 minutes or 12 minutes, other than you could be out on the tractor or going for a hike and enjoying nature and listen to this and say, oh, I'm uplifted today. I feel good. Even though everything in my life may be uncertain, like, okay, there's hope still. And that's what we all bring, is that hope and that light. And that was the intent. So I appreciate that. And I'll close this. Hey, everyone, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, listen to these guys, and and thank them for keeping this podcast going, because who knows? I mean, at some point you say, look, that's soaking me and I can't afford to do it. So you guys keep the boat floating and allow us all to share our stories and get it out there. So thank you very much. And thank you for listening, because without listeners, we'd just be talking to ourselves. So thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode. We greatly appreciate your support. We would greatly appreciate a positive thumbs up on all of the platforms like iTunes and Spotify or wherever you're listening. And we just thank you for our Patreon supporters. We greatly appreciate your help in getting this message out. We think there's a lot of important information, and hopefully this helps you. Have a great day, and thank you for listening, and thank you for your support.